Before we end this lesson, I want to talk a little bit about configuration. If you try and deploy the website onto Heroku, as we did in the last class, and you try and use either password reset or new user registration, you're going to be a little bit disappointed because it's not going to work. Heroku doesn't supply the ability to actually send emails out of the box. You generally need another service or your own SMTP server, although I don't recommend that. You should really use an email service. And you need to let Django know how to access that email service. So in my terminal, you can see I've opened config settings base, and I've added a little bit of a nicer title here. And you can see I've left the backend, which is what we were using for the console email, and I've then added a whole host of options that we can configure in our Heroku setup. You can see that we have a default from email as well as the server email. And for the exact differences in when each one of these is used, I would refer you to the Django documentation. We then have the ability to set the host for our email service as well as the port for our email service. And you can see I'm just defaulting to a port here. I'm also not setting a host, but this was usually going to be some sort of server. I have just set this to true, because you should absolutely use encryption when communicating with your email service. Finally, you have the host user and the host password, although on some of the services I've seen, these can be the same token that are used to actually access the service. In terms of services, you have a number of different options. You can see that if you just look at Heroku elements for the add-ons available to your Heroku setup, there's a whole host of different services that you could just immediately add on to Heroku and then be paying for that service through Heroku. There are also a number of services that are not included in this list, but that are very, very good. For the last 4 or 5 years, I've been using Postmark to send my transactional emails. They are focused entirely on just sending emails like password resets and new user registration. So they don't have anything like newsletters or mass email blasts. So this is really just for transactional emails that go to a single person infrequently, and their entire goal is to make transactional email very good. And I've been very happy. I'm not affiliated in any way, shape, or form, but that's worked for me. I've also seen Mailjet at PyCon a few times. I hear pretty good things. And of course, you have the larger ones such as SendGrid, which I believe handles not only newsletters, but as well as transactional emails. But you can see that what they actually market directly on their front page is the email. Well, I take that back. There's a password reset, but you know. Now, there's also Mailgun, and we could keep going. I could just begin to open up all these tabs with all the various services. If you are doing this for business, I would recommend taking a moment to look through all of the services, see which one makes the most sense based on what other emails you may be sending. If it really is just a question of transactional emails, find the specialists, go with them if the price for that service makes sense for you and your business. The bottom line here is that you're now in a position where you have the ability to configure Django, and once you have the service, you know exactly what information you will need to put into Django so that Django can communicate with the SMTP service. Now, you'll note I refer to this specifically as an SMTP service because that is what Django is going to try and connect to. If you are trying to use a mail service that doesn't support SMTP and would like you to use an API of theirs, or maybe they have a library specifically for Python, then your setup is going to be very different. However, this gets you started and out the gates and allows you to now send emails for both password reset and for new user registration if you deploy to your Heroku app.